Hello friends, and welcome. Today we are playing Deus Ex Human Revolution, or as I suppose it should be pronounced, Deus Ex Humdeltan Revolution. Nailed it. I'm hilarious. I have had a inkling, a compulsion towards playing Deus Ex recently. The sequel to Human Revolution was announced. They did a trailer for it not too long ago, and you know, people have been talking on podcasts and online. I'm just all like, Deus Ex, man, I gotta get it. And like I said, I've just played the Deus Ex, the original Deus Ex, the first level of it for a Let's Play type thing a couple of days ago, and it got me thinking a lot about reboots and remakes, which is somewhat of a dirty word in our culture, and by culture I mean like our nerd culture, our gaming culture, our geek and sci-fi culture, because they're so frequently done poorly. But I actually think that the reboot, thankfully, it's kind of gaining a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for here? Like faith, I suppose. It's regaining a little bit of faith from we who receive it. But I think that Deus Ex Human Revolution is an amazing example of a reboot. And so I thought it'd be a little bit of fun to like go through, play the first level, and talk about some of the changes they've made, what works, what doesn't work, what makes a good reboot, what makes a bad reboot. And just talking about things like, you know, nostalgia and shit like that. And I've clicked the wrong button. Whoopsie. So we're picking up a little bit of the way into the game here. All that I've really done so far is the tutorial. And what's happened so far is we've introduced our player character, Adam Jensen, who is the security chief for Sarif Industries. The game starts off with the building, Sarif Industries building, coming under attack, and a whole bunch of scientists basically getting shot up on the R&D levels, one of whom is your girlfriend, or your ex-girlfriend, because, you know, we need to have some gritty character motivation. But yeah, you get really fucked up. You start off the game just as a regular human, but you get really, really fucked up. And they put a whole bunch of robotic replacement limbs on you in the after the injury, and you know that at least one of them isn't necessary. Your boss has like, what's it called? Like proxy, like medical proxy over injuries you sustain in the line of work or something like that. And so, you know, you're unconscious and you're bleeding out. And when I say you're fucked up, you're proper fucked up. Like without surgery, you would have died. But you don't strictly know how much of the augmentations you received are necessary. And then, yeah, you've come back to work 6 months later after, you know, like 6 months passes without us as the player seeing anything. And then you come back to work. And the first thing that happens when you walk through the door is like, oh shit, one of our research labs, our off-site research labs is under attack, and we need you to deal with it. And so I'm here at the chopper, ready to go.
Welcome back, Jensen. Didn't think we'd see you around here for a while yet.
You know how it goes, Malik.
I like this character, Malik.
Don't I know it. I was in my wingsuit halfway to the top of the Renaissance Center when I got the 911. But you... 6 months is a hell of a short time to come back from the dead. You sure you're ready for this?
Only one way to find out.
Roger that. The boss is already on board, arguing with the DPD's tactical response team. They've got the plant surrounded, but Mr. Sarif wants you to go in first. You all set here? Because the sooner we take off, the better it will be for everyone.
I'm ready.
Great. Then let's get airborne.
Yeah, I quite like Malik. She's a good character. You know, she's a little bit sidekicky, unfortunately, but yeah, I like her presence because she's one of the larger characters in the game, and it's cool that they have an Arabic character who's also female in a role like that. You know, in a primary supporting role. One of the big things about the Deus Ex games is they're kind of global, you know what I mean? Like, they take place all over and in all different parts of the world. That's one of the things I really like about them, that they're not very Western-centric, at least in the geography of the games, and I kind of like that they're bringing in a little bit more
to put us down on a roof.
cultural variety in their characters as well.
Fine. As long as she pulls you out the minute I'm gone. So what am I looking at here? Who are these guys?
Pro-human purists, or so they
In
say.
the first game,
Same
they had
purists who've been firebombing limb
Anna
clinics all over
Navarra
the country.
and Gunther
I
Herman,
don't
and
think
both
it's
of
a
them were kind of
coincidence they hit
stereotypes.
us
A lot of
today,
the French
only
women were
hours after we moved
stereotyped,
the
and
Typhoon in for a
in the
assembly
first
line
one.
factory.
The Typhoon? Megan's team was testing it the day that bastard... Who's on point for these guys?
Adam, I know you.
Megan is the head researcher of
Who
Sarif
is on
Industries,
point
my
for these
ex-girlfriend
guys?
who was killed in the attack.
Goes by the name of Sanders. That's him there. He's an augmented Adam, so he can't be one of the mercs who attacked us, but he did know exactly how to get inside our plant.
Alright, so how do you want me to handle this?
First priority is the Typhoon. I'm keeping SWAT out until you've secured it. As far as rules of engagement go, I'll defer to you. Lethal or non-lethal?
Now, I'm picking non-lethal because, like, this choice isn't binding. I'm going to pick non-lethal because
not looking to
I
start a
prefer the
firefight
non-lethal
there, just
weapons. They're
neutralize
generally silent.
Okay, but just make sure those bastards don't wake up and warn their friends. You remember what it's like in there? A lot of tight enclosed hallways, but the labs themselves are pretty open, high ceilings. So, do you want something you can use from a distance, or up close?
Stun gun or tranq rifle. The tranq rifle's an awesome weapon, and I always forget that they give it to you right off the bat. It's like a sniper rifle, a non-lethal sniper rifle. The stun gun has a range of literally something like a meter or two, and if you're that close, a lot of the time you can just punch him out anyway. So I'm going to go with the
Give me something
tranq
at
rifle.
distance. If I get too close, I'll take them out personally.
Just try not to break anything expensive. The Typhoon should be in the factoring labs, but Pritchard will tell you more as you go in. I've got him running comms.
Terrific. Anything else?
Keep your eyes open for hostages. Free them if you can, but the Typhoon is your #1 priority. We developed it for the Alphabet agencies, and if we don't deliver it to them intact and still a secret, well, I'm sure you'll get the job done right.
Okay, so we've just been dropped off, and here we are at the helipad. We're about to go through the first level. Just go through some lockers here real quick, because it's Deus Ex game. We've got to scrounge around a little bit. But, yeah, so, reboots, right? We're here to talk about reboots. And as I was saying before, it's kind of like a dirty word in sort of nerd culture. I mean, there's a lot of movies that are bad reboots. There are a lot of games that are bad reboots.
Where are you?
Hang on, a little cutscene here.
In the plant.
Good. Your point of entry should be through shipping and receiving.
Should be, Francis. What the hell does that mean?
We have an employee entrance there, heavily guarded by purists, no doubt. So, if you're not a fan of the frontal assault, I suppose you could try accessing the building's roof.
Alright, so that was actually a very good thing to hear. Because, so keep that in mind, that we can assault the guys or we can go over the roof. Because, like, there are a lot of bad reboots, but I think this is a good example of a good reboot. That I think that the term reboot is gaining a little bit more faith again, thankfully, when that we're seeing more and more people do good ones. But it's still, yeah, there still is a little bit of soreness there, and like the most famous example of a bad reboot is the prequel Star Wars trilogies. What makes a reboot good or bad, or the difference between a good and a bad reboot, is kind of, this is a very wishy-washy, nebulous thing to say, but it's about how the thing feels. We play games and we watch movies and we go to particular genres or series for particular reasons, yeah? Like, I play Deus Ex for a different reason than I play Portal. I play League of Legends for a different reason to why I play Mass Effect. And understanding what it is about the thing that appeals to people is crucial to making a good reboot. Good reboots don't just, like, flat out try and clone the original. They understand what it is the original's, like, trying to deliver on and figure out the best way they can do that with the tools they have, and sometimes that means sacrificing things and changing things. So think about that. Down here we had all of these guys. If I wanted to, I could have taken cover and shot them all up. I could have snuck around them, knocked a couple of them out, or I could have come up here and done this. The very first thing you do in the first level of the new Deus Ex is choose an approach. Choose to play the game your way, which is a big thing that the game promises to deliver on. And so right off the bat, you're already presented with this choice, with this... You're given something that you're looking for. If I want combat, I can take combat. If I want stealth, I can do stealth. If I want to be a parkour monkey guy like I'm doing now, I can do that, which is kind of stealth, but you know what I'm getting at. So, yeah, like already the game feels like Deus Ex. It's delivering me an experience that I remember from the original. Now, if we compare that to something like Star Wars, for example, and I know I'm using I'm using that because it's an obvious example, and it's one that I think a lot of people kind of understand. The opening of the new of the Phantom Menace, where they had all of that legalese, trade disputes, tariffs, blockades, what's going on, like, that's not why people come to Star Wars. They don't come to see a political thriller about the nuances of tax law. They come to see,
next time we discuss security loopholes.
a space adventure.
Take notes. The Typhoon is in the factoring labs. There's an elevator just past the assembly labs that will take you to it.
Got it.
Sorry, I got a little bit distracted. But yeah, they come to Star Wars to see a space adventure, not tax law. And that's probably the best example I can think of. That right off the bat, my expectations are set in a particular way, that I'm already feeling things that are evocative of the original Deus Ex, despite a lot of the changes that they've made. Now, that's the first way reboots can go wrong, is that they totally miss... Well, I mean, that's basically the only way a reboot can go wrong, is they miss the point of the original thing that they're rebooting. But that's one way that they can miss the point, that they can just kind of not really understand why it is people like the thing and deliver something differently. The Die Hard movies actually are another example of a bad reboot. If you look at like the recent Die Hard reboots that are all about like ridiculously over-the-top gun-blazing action as opposed to the slow-paced, claustrophobic feel of the isolated feel of the original. You see those movies for two different reasons. You see the ball-busting action movie for a different reason than you see the claustrophobic one, and that's another reason why I feel certainly that the Die Hard films are an example of a bad reboot. So that's one way that they can go wrong, by delivering something, like not even trying to sort of deliver what it is they're supposed to be delivering, if that makes sense. Like, those Die Hard movies are not trying to be Die Hard. They're trying to be action movies, and they're using the Die Hard name to get a little bit of, like, benefit of the doubt from the audience, yeah? The other way the thing can go wrong, though, is almost, in some ways it's the opposite, right? But it comes from the same misunderstanding. Like, the game will misunderstand what it is that's appealing about it, and think that merely creating a carbon copy of the thing in a superficial way is delivering on what the original game is intended to provide the player. And so you have this really, like, the best way I can sort of describe it is it's like they understand the game in the way like a robot would understand the game. It's like, oh, it's got similar mechanics, or it follows a similar formula. It's like a carbon copy, but it doesn't actually deliver what it's supposed to deliver. And that's where you get a lot of the feeling of something being very dated comes from. Because if they wanted to, they could have copied the mechanics from the original Deus Ex wholesale and just kind of updated the music and the visuals and just, the frame rate and stuff like that. And it's like, all right, cool, done. We made it look better, we made it sound better, but it's basically the same game. And that would have also been a mistake. What Human Revolution has done, and what I think makes it such a good reboot, is that they understand what Deus Ex is supposed to feel like, what it's supposed to deliver on. And they've taken that, but they haven't taken all of the, like, the flaws of games from that time, games from that era, and just, like, replicated them for the sake of replication. Like, they've actually looked at stuff and gone, okay, how can we make this better? And they don't nail it 100% of the time. There are changes they've made that are bad, quite frankly. But overall, I think the changes they've made have improved the game. One of them, here we go, we can talk about this, is that they've included regenerating health and regenerating energy, which I know some people will probably be disappointed by, because, you know, it's like, oh, it's not an RPG, you know, there was that whole survival element, you had to manage your resources and all that kind of stuff. Even though the regenerating health, you can argue that that's not in the spirit of the game. I think that it's irrelevant to the spirit of the game, and I think that the spirit of the game can still be accessed, like what it's supposed to provide us with can still be given to us, even with that change, and it means that those things that the game is supposed to be delivering on, you know, the stealth experience, the narrative experience, the combat experience, all of that kind of stuff, it's more readily accessible. We don't have to deal with the bullshit of scrounging around for a little bit of health. We don't have to wade through that huge pace-breaking experience. We can just get straight back to the reasons we play the game. And I think that's an advantage. It's an example of a change that kind of streamlines the experience so that we get to what we're looking at, what we're looking for more immediately. And that word streamlined, actually, I'm going to be using that a lot, because a lot of the good changes that are made in this game help in that way. They help make the game run smoother. They help make the game run quicker, that you can get back to stuff. Don't have enough energy, but it's regenerated, so I can just plump him. See, that would have been really frustrating if I had to open up my inventory then and find a candy bar to nom on. You know, auto-saving is a very, very kind of obvious example of a positive change as well. Like, the original Deus Ex didn't have auto-saving, so you had to stop and manually save. The autosave means that you just don't have to think about that. If I fail, I know that I'm not going to go too far back. I don't have to have that moment of panic of like, oh crap, when was the last time I quick-saved? Shit, it was like an hour ago. What was wrong with me? And there's also that thing, if we get back on the regenerating health, and we've all done this, where we've quick-saved and then kind of realized, oh crap, I've quick-saved and I don't have enough ammo, I don't have enough health, I thought I had a med kit and I didn't have it. And so you've overwritten your quick-save with this terrible position. With the regenerating health and the regenerating energy, that's far less likely to happen. One of the other big changes, and I've only actually realized this because I played the original Deus Ex 2 days ago, is level design. Yeah, now level design is one of those subtler changes that a lot of people wouldn't really recognize off the bat. Yeah, but the level design in Human Revolution in this game is very linear compared to the original Deus Ex. In the original Deus Ex, you found yourself in these huge facilities, and you could basically go anywhere you wanted to go in the facility. You could go to the armory first, or you could go to the security room first. And, you know, sometimes there was, like, you know, you need a key to get to the Delta area or whatever. But for the most part, you had control over the direction that you went. And that was good, but and the level design in the original Deus Ex was really, really, really quite good. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the linearity of this game is necessarily a bad thing. Linearity has a lot of advantages in that I almost never feel like I'm lost when I'm playing Human Revolution. Like, I always have a sense of where I'm supposed to go. Hacking is also a new thing. Yeah, and it's another example of how things have been streamlined. In the original Deus Ex, you had multi-tools which you used to hack electronics, lockpicks which you used to pick doors, and a computer skill which you would use to hack computers. In Human Revolution, all three of those things are now one thing. hacking. Yeah? And, you know, some people might go, oh, resource management. But personally, I think that this is a much better way to go about it. It's just very streamlined. And it gives you the experience of hacking the door, of using that skill, using that technique, without necessarily having to be like, oh, I've got to split my experience points over 3 different schools just to make sure I'm covering all my bases. If you want to be a hacker, you be a hacker and you're done. Do you know what I mean? And it's just an example of the way things have been simplified, and it gives you the experience and the feeling and the promise of that hacking experience, yeah, without holding on to some of those complications that the older game had. Okay. Now I'm gonna cheat a little bit here because, like I said, I played the game before. So I know there's a vent there, but admittedly I did not know there was a guy there.
Access granted.
Save some hostages. That's a bit of fun. Cool. Promise a guy to save his wife. Hopefully I'll pull that off. It's not guaranteed. Might fuck it up. Who knows? So I don't want to spend too long talking about like tech improvements. You know what I mean? Because, you know, a lot of that stuff is obvious. Like the frame rate is better, the resolution is higher, and all of that's, you know, really, really clear. But there are some ways, like if I think it's worth noting, I will bring it up, because some of the restrictions of the original Deus Ex, even though they were based on like resource limitations of the time and stuff like that, some of the changes do make a really big difference. And the one thing I think that this game has that irrevocably shits all over the original Deus Ex is an actual soundtrack. The original Deus Ex had a pretty monstrous soundtrack, and like, you know, they did what they could with what they had to work with at the time again, so I don't want to be too hard on them, but yeah, I mean, there were some pretty obnoxious loops, and even though some of them were catchy, that's not the same as being good. And there were very legitimately times where I stopped playing the game just because I couldn't stand the soundtrack anymore. I bring up the tech resource stuff because even though visual, like I said, visual fidelity in terms of like pixel count and frame rates, all of that kind of dick-waving stuff isn't super important. But aesthetics do matter when constructing a game, because we are visual creatures and we do infer a lot about things based on how they look. And I'm not talking about, oh, that looks good and that looks bad. Obviously, I'm talking a little bit more deeply than that. And if we just use a really simple example here, this is Adam Jensen hiding in this corner here, and he's very dark and grey and monotone in his look. He's very sleek and mechanical. Whereas the guys that I'm up against here, the purists, they have a lot of, where I have a lot of cold colours, they have a lot of like warm colours, they have like nooses around their neck, they wear natural things like leathers and stuff like that, as opposed to me, which is all like polymers and fibers and metal and literally like bolts and stuff. And so we infer a little bit about the differences between them and myself based on just the way they look. A better example is the whole Renaissance aesthetic. One of the things that the game does is it's got this idea of like the new Enlightenment or the new Renaissance, yeah, and so a lot of the characters have Renaissance sort of fashion motifs worked into their looks. I might pull up a picture of like Eliza or Megan or David Sarif here, so I can kind of illustrate that. Sarif compared to Taggart is actually a pretty good, a good one. Because, like, if you look at Sarif, and I'm trying to remember what he looks like off the top of my head here, he has this, there are elements of that futurist kind of aesthetic, that Renaissance aesthetic on him, and so you get the impression that he's like he practices what he preaches. You know what I mean? Like you see that he's on the pro-augmentation side at a glance, just because of his fashion sense. You also see that he has a cyber prosthetic arm, an augmented arm that. And that's, like I was saying, it's like he practices what he preaches when he's all saying, like, augmentation's the way of the future, augmentation's the way to go. That's not just him trying to make money. You can see on his body that he does genuinely believe in augmentations. However, that said, he does look like he's got like that two-tone collar type thing, which is very reminiscent of the 80s Wall Street kind of banker type. And that, again, that it's a reminder that despite his politics, he is also part of a very capitalist system, and he still has a material interest in augmentations being what they are. If you look at his arm, you actually see like the Renaissance motif on the arm. So the arm, unlike Jensen's arms here, which are very practical and militaristic, Sarif's arm is very ornate and opulent. And so you see a lot of differences between them, and then you compare that to Taggart, and could you get anyone who looks any more like a conservative, down-home, kind of American, good old-fashioned values type politician? And all of that stuff, although the original Deus Ex did have an art direction, it was not as sophisticated. The art direction of the original Deus Ex was a lot more about, this guy's a cyberpunk dude who wears a trench coat and sunglasses at night. And even though I wear a trench coat and sunglasses too, that's more about being reminiscent of the previous game than it is about necessarily communicating something about the character themselves. In this game, the aesthetics are, I just think they're more thought out than the ones in the original Deus Ex. And that wouldn't be possible without the improvements in technology. Now, we're getting introduced to our security systems here, which is good because it's another change that we can talk about. You can see the security camera has a cone of vision there. That is not something that was in the original Deus Ex. You could not tell what cameras... You could only kind of see the vague direction a camera was pointing. You weren't 100% sure what its field of view was. And again, there's that argument. It's like, it's dumbing it down, it's making it too easy. But, again, it's about understanding what these cameras are designed to do. The cameras function as basically a stealth... They only really matter if you want to play the game stealth. If you don't care about stealth, the cameras can't really hurt you. So, to understand what they're about... Hang on a second, I gotta figure out this puzzle. To understand what they're about, we need to talk a little bit about stealth games. Stealth in games isn't the same as action. I play stealth for a different reason, or I do a stealth run of this game for a different reason than why I do an action run, a run and gun kind of run. Action games are about, it's pretty obvious what they're about. It's about, shooting enemies and overcoming, I say physical, in air quotes there, but you know what I'm trying to say. It's about overcoming that kind of challenge. Stealth is not... It's a lot less about action than it is about puzzle solving. Like, these cameras and these guards, they have specific patrols. They're obstacles in my way, and I have to navigate... I'm actually going to move this guy because he's going to get seen by that camera. I have to... yeah, that'll do. These things are obstacles in my way, and I have to navigate around them. I have to get from one side of the room to the other, and I have to not get seen by the cameras and not get spotted by the guards. That is... when you think about it like that, it's actually not too different from a game like Portal. In Portal, there's stuff in my way, and I have to use my skills and maneuvers to get from one side of the test chamber to the other. Stealth, it is kind of helpful to think about stealth as a stealth puzzle. Now, that's important because if I fail a puzzle because I didn't notice something, or because I thought a camera was looking one way and it turns out it was actually a little bit misleading and was looking another, that's frustrating. You know what I mean? Like, I fail that and I'm like, oh, for fuck's sake, if I knew the camera could see me when I was here, then I wouldn't have walked here. But by giving it these little cones of vision, I have more information off the bat. And so if I fail this puzzle, it's actually because I didn't think it through properly, not because I misunderstood the puzzle that I'm being presented with. And so, again, we're looking at one of these streamlining changes. We're looking at one of these little changes that make the game more accessible in that way. It means that when I do my stealth puzzles and I fail, I know it's because, oh, you know, I thought about this wrong. I should do this differently. It's enthusiastically, like, it makes me enthusiastic about trying again. But if I fail and I'm frustrated, that just makes me want to put the game down. I was talking before about tech and resource improvements. One of the things that this game can do that the original Deus Ex couldn't is have these little news shows running in the background. And it means that I can absorb a lot more of the narrative passively. In the first one, you had like newspapers and books that you can stop and read, and you have them in these too. But just by walking through this room and taking out these guys, I don't have to stop to listen to this, but I'll probably pick up a couple of the things about, you know, the riots and the state of the world just by passing through there. So it's a nice little advantage that this game has over the original. And the original, again, it couldn't do it because of things like RAM and memory and all of that jazz. Now that they have the resources to do that, again, I think it's an improvement. One of the big things, like, because I was talking a lot about feeling, and how this game feels like a Deus Ex game, and you know, like I said, it's a very kind of nebulous, wishy-washy thing to say. But atmosphere is a really big part of games, and atmosphere, like, I wish I was, like, I'm not a film student or anything like that, so I'm often quite bad at explaining this kind of thing. But atmosphere is kind of like, it's how the game feels, and it's got you know, visual elements and thematic elements, and it's also got elements of like tone and things like that. But one of the things I really nail in this is atmosphere, and a lot of the way they do it is, you know, through a lot of visuals. And when you're inside a big facility like this, it's kind of hard to see that. We saw a little bit of it at the start at the helipad, like that gritty city kind of aesthetic. But, you know, the whole game's set at night, and it's still very noir in a lot of its genre conceits. It's got a lot of that, you know, classic cyberpunk and classic noir kind of stuff. Now, I gotta be quick here, because he'll probably see some of the bodies I just took down. Come on, battery. Come on. Bang! Those, I don't know what to call them, like those mini cutscenes where he stands up and takes the guy out. Actually, watching those can be annoying, but the fact that the knockout is executed for me is another one of these streamline improvements. One of my major complaints about the original Deus Ex is that if to knock someone out, you had to knock them out from behind. And if you hit them just even a little bit off to the side, a lot of the time it wouldn't be a clean knockout. They'd go ouch and then, you know, scream out, and the other guards would hear. By doing it like this, it's removing that demand for me to be in the exact right spot. It's not that I didn't think that puzzle through properly. It's not that I failed to understand my situation. It's that I was marginally off. So again, it's one of those improvements that makes the game less frustrating, and it means that when I'm doing stealth puzzles, I feel like I'm actually being stealthy. So hang on, I've just got my first augmentation here. This is the augmentation menu, and I gotta be honest, I think this is kind of a mess, and a lot of this stuff doesn't even make sense how they categorize this. But it's no worse, I think, than the original. One of the things I think that is an improvement, actually, is that you have skill points and you choose where to put them. And I can put them in anything. In the original Deus Ex, you'd get these upgrade canisters, and they could only be used on your skin, or only be used on your legs, and it it was less free in the way that you wanted to develop the character. A second thing as well, I was talking earlier about how in the original Deus Ex there were 2 kinds of hacking, and in this they streamlined it to 1. In the original Deus Ex you had skills, which you upgraded with experience, and augmentation, which you unlocked with augmentation canisters, and then upgraded with augmentation upgrades. So you've got these 3 separate systems, whereas in this you have 1 system. You get Praxis by either leveling up or picking up Praxis things. And it's an example of, again, how they've streamlined it so you can get to that experience, that feeling of role-playing and developing and choosing how you want to build your character without necessarily convoluting it. Like I said, I didn't want to talk too much about obvious updates, but interface design stuff is also much better in this. This interface is better than the one that was in the original Deus Ex. This is, like, the fact that the camera is a much bigger part of the screen and all of that kind of stuff. It's just better. Yeah, I like that they didn't hold on to that blue-on-blue cyberpunk aesthetic just because it was how the original Deus Ex did it. They actually improved that and made that more, readable. One of the things that I think a lot of audience members have trouble grasping is that the reasons that a film or a game is enjoyable or good, a lot of those reasons are actually very invisible to players. They've got to do with, like, in games it's things like animation and, like, atmosphere and stuff like that. And pacing, is like narrative pacing is a really big deal. A lot of these little things that people don't realize consciously makes a story good or bad, but is, very, very important behind the scenes in that way. I don't know if you've ever heard that the expression, the language of cinema. But film is a visual medium, and things like editing really change the way we perceive things. And we might not even consciously realize that, how it changes how a story feels, Things like editing and prop choices and all that kind of stuff communicate something to us about how a story feels, about how it moves. It tells us who we're supposed to care about and what we're supposed to focus on, stuff like that. There's a gunfight going on down there. But the point is, there's this language of cinema. There's a language of games where we have these certain tropes, these certain techniques that communicate things to us in a particular way. And a lot of people don't realize that changes over time. The language of games, 12, 15 years ago is different to the language of games today. The language of cinema in the 70s and 80s is different to the language of cinema today. And there are certain types of film and games that you can get away with making, or certain, conceits that you can use in games and in film from those times that would fly then but won't fly now. But that language changes over time. I wish I could think of an example off the top of my head. Here we go. This is maybe a bad example, but an Adam Sandler movie, right? In the 90s or late 80s or whatever, when Adam Sandler was this this is the best thing in the world, this is the funniest thing ever, this is amazing. It worked then, but if the career trajectory of Mr. Sandler is anything to go by, it's clear that we have moved on culturally from a lot of those things. And if you were to put, as much as I might have loved fucking Happy Gilmore or whatever as a young man, if a new Happy Gilmore movie was made today, I would not enjoy it. Because what I expect from films and how I expect comedy to operate is different now to when it was then. That I, as an audience member, expect different things. When people make reboots, they need to recognize that they can't just make a carbon copy sometimes. One of the things that got me thinking about reboots and all of that is the Ukulele Kickstarter. The Ukulele Kickstarter closed... No, the opposite of that. Opened like a week ago. And they were asking for some reasonable number of pounds, and then they got some ridiculous number of pounds. I don't know what they were actually asking for, but they're well over $1 million now. And just I'm sure all of you know this, but just in case some of you don't, Yooka-Laylee is a game that's kind of a throwback to the Banjo-Kazooie Super Mario 64 era 3D platformer. And it's being made by a whole bunch of people who worked on the original Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie, and it's all like, oh yeah, this is it. We're going to redo that. We're going to make a new... This is going to be like... It's effectively being promised as the spiritual successor to Banjo-Tooie. 2 decades on? And everyone is crazy excited. And, good for them, I guess, but... It's got, because, like, it's effectively like, yeah, we're going to reboot this genre, I guess, because it's not really like they're rebooting a series, but it's very much being promoted as the pseudo-sequel to Banjo-Tooie. I know a lot of people who are super, super excited, as I said, but whenever anything like this comes up, I'm just a little bit cautious, because nostalgia is a tricky thing. Yeah, a lot of companies sort of try and capitalize on it. They're all like, oh yeah, like we were talking about the Die Hard thing earlier, right? It's like, yeah, Die Hard, these are, like, that's just a soulless sort of capitalization on those films. It's like, we're going to use the name to get more people in the door, and then make an action movie that's got Bruce Willis in it, sure, but has basically got nothing to do with Die Hard. This Banjo-Kazooie Yooka-Laylee thing, I in no way am I that cynical about it. I think that they're genuinely trying to recapture that same kind of feeling and that same kind of aesthetic, but they keep talking about the way they're doing things. And I'm a little bit concerned about this Yooka-Laylee thing. I think that people think about Banjo-Kazooie, right? And they have all this nostalgia for it, and it's like, oh man, I used to love playing that game when I was a kid. That was great. It was amazing. It was the best game. I had so much fun. And there are so many things that make me... uncomfortable is probably a bit strong, but very, very cautious about getting excited for it. One of the big things is that I'm not a kid anymore. I'm an adult now. Yeah, and though I might be able to play Yooka-Laylee and go, hey, this is a good game. It's very much like Banjo-Kazooie. It works exactly how that game worked. It's got a lot of the same conceits and all that kind of stuff. It might not work just because I've grown, because it's been like 15, 20 years since I played Banjo-Kazooie. Like, I wish I knew exactly when Banjo-Kazooie came out. I'm going to assume it was closer to 2000. I would have been about 10, maybe. So that's the first part, that all of these people who love Banjo-Kazooie played it as a child, when they had the minds of a child and the enthusiasm of a child, and they had the desires of a child, and now they're all cynical adults who have to do things like pay taxes and they watch Batman movies that are made by Chris Nolan and Game of Thrones and shit, and their tastes are just different now. So that's a big one. The second one is, like I was saying before, this whole idea of like language of cinema, language of games. The medium has evolved, and just because something worked in 1999 or whatever doesn't mean that it's going to work today. That those same techniques, like if you were to pull Banjo-Tooie out today and put it in front of a child who'd never ever played it before, would they like it? I don't know if they would, because it's not Minecraft. And that sounds like a really, like, because it's not fucking Minecraft. Minecraft has changed the way we think about games. I think that in like 5 years or 10 years, we're going to look back at when Minecraft came out, and we're going to talk about the pre-Minecraft and post-Minecraft industry. We're going to talk about creativity as like a primary, like, engagement factor in games for children. And as great as Banjo-Kazooie is, it's a platformer. It doesn't have that. It's not Skylanders. I'm not saying that Skylanders and stuff are better than Banjo-Kazooie. I love Banjo-Kazooie, and I think in a lot of ethical ways it is the superior game. But my point is that if you take a game from 20 years ago and put it in front of somebody now, there's a lot more than just the technology and the graphical fidelity that needs to be different about it. You need to understand how gaming has evolved, how gaming has changed, what it is that people look for now, and understand what our expectations are there. And because that language is different, if you carbon copy something, it might not work. You know, you can't make an Adam Sandler movie today. You can't make, like, a silent film from the 40s today. And that if you made a film like that today, it wouldn't quite fly. There are other downsides to nostalgia as well. One of the big ones is the obvious one, that it's really hard to live up to people's expectations. You know? Banjo-Kazooie was this amazing game, and our memories of playing it are probably better than playing it actually was. You know, like, I remember when I was a kid playing a game like Banjo-Tooie or like Perfect Dark for the first time. Your memory is just like, oh my god, I had so much fun, it was amazing to see all this stuff for the first time. It was just so cool and so, like, atmospheric and all of this stuff. How do you live up to that? How do you live up to, you know, the rose-colored glasses of childhood? There's also the first time thing. Like, everything's better the first time. You know, Batman Begins was amazing. Dark Knight Rises, not so much. Mass Effect 1 blew my mind. Mass Effect 3 was a bit of a letdown. Because you get to that point where it's like, okay, yeah, I've seen this stuff before, and even though it's not like, oh yeah, fuck off, I've seen that before, even if you still really enjoy it, being new enhances things, and by design, nostalgic properties are not new. You know, they have that disadvantage. Look, the point is, I'm excited for this ukulele thing, but I'm cautiously optimistic about it, if that makes sense. Like, they look like they're doing things a lot of the right way, and the stretch goals they've laid out, they're not the kind that are going to ruin their game or anything like that. But I think that nostalgia is important to talk about when we talk about stuff like this. Alright, we've got a cutscene here. We're going to go through here and do this.
Don't lie to me. I don't want to hurt you. You're a civilian. But I will if you don't give me a choice.
So this is one of the additions. They have this, like, really complex social system. And where you have to kind of navigate through these conversations. So they're quite good.
All you body polluters break laws. You're all the same.
You're gonna have a hard time convincing people you're any different once they hear you had an AUG on your team.
What?
I found your attack dog in the factoring labs, trying to cut through security with his implanted hackware.
Nice try, Cholo. But I would never let one of you freaks on my crew. Back off, Lantern. I got business to take care of, understand? If what you say is true, and I'm not saying it is here, but I gotta check things out. So me and la vieja, we're leaving.
You know, so we learn a couple of things about this guy's character in that cutscene, where he's all like, I don't want to hurt civilians, but I will if I have to. So we can go through this conversation, and we have to choose, like, approaches that work with his specific character.
This bitch is dead.
Bullshit. You're bigger than that. You don't kill civilians.
Damn right. I'm a decorated vet, and I won't be jerked around. I need to find out who's behind this, and right now the boss lady's my only ticket out of here.
Listen to me. Whatever's going on, it's big. You've got a better chance of getting to the bottom of it if you work with me. But I can't do a thing until you let her go.
Are you stupid? I don't work with AUGs. God, you must think I'm some kind of moron. And who can blame you? Because it's exactly what it must look like to everyone right now. Trapped in here by the cops, and my only option is to take a hostage. How screwed up is that?
So yeah, like, we have the classic Mass Effect wheel type choice here. But what I like about this is that it summarizes it in like an approach, if that makes sense. And you've got the summary, and then you've got, like, the full thing you're going to say, which is important because the details of it are important. But I like the strategy of this. It's like, how is this guy going to respond to what approach?
Nothing else to say.
You're doing better than you think. You're still standing, and that's more than the hacker was expecting. You said you're a vet, so I know you've got the balls to handle this. You don't need the civilian to get you out of here.
You got a good point there, but still. There's no way I could put my trust in you. You're on the same side as the cops. They got me completely surrounded and there's nothing I can do. I'm all alone in here.
The only thing the cops are focused on right now is the safety of the civilians. Same as you. You've risked your life to do what's best for other people. You're not some drive-by banger.
You're right. I'm not. You know what? We're done talking. The puto who tricked my brother thought he had us beat, but we are so much tougher than he counted on. I'm gonna go find him and anybody else who helped him. And when I do, they're gonna see the Angel of Vengeance in action, baby.
Is your whole family this stupid? The workers being here tonight was part of the hacker's plan. He was counting on you using a hostage, so you get yourself killed and tie up a loose end. You're stumbling right into another of his traps.
No, I'm not. God! I almost fell for it again. No way, man. He's not suckering me twice in one night. Get lost, chica, before you get me killed. I did what you wanted, so let me go. I got played here too, I say.
I've got as much interest in finding out who's really behind this as you do, Cabron.
Yeah, well, maybe I'll owe you one. But I promise you this, someone's gonna pay.
Are you still there?
Adam! Adam, what's happening? What's your situation? Adam!
Sanders is gone, boss. But I'm pretty sure he's just a dupe. Somebody else set this up.
Damn it. Okay, I want you back here now. The admin building has a rooftop terrace. Meet for Rita on it.
Copy. Jetson out.
So, there it is, level 1 of Deus Ex Human Revolution. I hope you all enjoyed joining me for this little experiment, and I hope we enjoyed talking about nostalgia and reboots and the good and the bad. In conclusion, reboots can be good, but sometimes they are bad, and whether or not they are good is dependent on whether or not the rebooters understand what it is the product is designed to deliver to the player, and whether or not they have the ability to understand how to deliver those same feelings in a different cultural landscape. Those are my thoughts, but I am just one humble box-throwing Let's Player. Huh! I'll catch you guys around.